Good evening and welcome to the City Council Workshop. I'll call this meeting to order. We'll start out with the work session that we started, Rick, a couple, 6 weeks ago, that we never got
When it was
finished.
just now beginning of sweater weather.
Yeah, and we never got finished with it, so we're going to finish it today. And it is on the council manager form of government. So I turn it over to Jerry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jerry Baker, City Attorney. As the Mayor mentioned, we are just finalizing the last, topic that we didn't get to at our retreat, which is council manager form of government. Plan is just to kind of go over, kind of do an overview of this type of form of government. And we've got some, just one, slide at the end with the examples that Rick's going to chime in and kind of take the lead on that. So, but at any time you have any questions, just feel free to stop me as I go through this presentation. Here we go. So, as you may or may not know, this form of government was instituted by the citizens of Nacogdoches upon the adoption of the initial city charter in 1929. Here's a copy of the charter. Adopted Thursday, March 21st, 1929, Texas Independence Day. Wow. As you can see on page 19 of the charter, the top there, I highlighted that in that red box there. We'll go and see the language here in a little bit. I'll tell you and represent to you that the language in that box there, may be hard to read it for you at this point, is exactly the same it is today, with one exception. There's a reference to the Board of Commissioners at that point. That's what this body was called. Now it's City Council. So I'll show you that in just a minute. The council manager form of government can be distinguished from what's referred to as a strong mayor. An example of that's the city of Houston. The main distinguishing factor is that some of the administrative duties are assigned to the mayor in a strong mayor form of government, whereas those are, as we're going to see, delegated to the city manager in the form of government adopted by the city of Nacogdoches. So it would be a good analogy is the board of directors and the CEO in a private enterprise organization. So I've got this little chart here to kind of show you how that works or looks like. So if you think of, a board of directors and a CEO at any kind of big organization, of course, the stockholders are the ones that put them in place, the board, and the board of directors appoint a chief executive officer who then oversees the employees. Likewise, the voters are the ones who place the city council in your spots, and the city council appoints a city manager who then in turn oversees and directs the city staff.
So I'm going to say one thing at this juncture since you have this one up. One of the comparisons I've even heard is, let's say this is General Motors, and granted you'd be dealing with unionized employees, all the reason more not to. But you wouldn't have the board of directors unless it was a called meeting and you were doing a walkthrough, a scheduled walkthrough. You wouldn't have them on the shop floor. They would not be on the shop floor at a General Motors facility. So that is, and even then, if you had a unionized shop, you would even probably have certain parameters that would be maybe announced and things like that, even if the chief executive is coming to make a statement. So just think of it that way, kind of just a day-to-day business versus a policy function.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to the next point. So in this form of government, there's a division of responsibilities. Policy is relegated to the board of directors in the private enterprise and city council in the council manager form of government. Administration of that policy in private enterprise given to the CEO, and here in the city in this form of government to the city manager. So kind of what does that look like? Kind of break that down a bit. So let's focus on the city council as policymakers. You are the elected representatives of the city of Nacogdoches. You each represent, a certain portion of the city, with the exception of the mayor, who represents the entirety of the city and elected by each of those respective areas. You are the governing body, and we'll look at the particular or specific provision from the charter that states that specifically here in just a minute. One of the acts of the city council is to appoint and supervise the city manager. You also have the authority in the charter to appoint and supervise the city attorney, myself. But since we're focusing on this form of government, I'm just going to look at city manager at this point. But those are the two positions I will point out. Those are the two positions in the entire city that the charter delegates specifically to the city council to do: appoint and supervise city manager and city attorney. The city council approves the budget and a tax rate, adopts the ordinances, and establishes the goals for the city. So as I mentioned, here's the specific reference from the charter. That's in Article 4, Section 10. The council shall enact all ordinances and resolutions and shall adopt all regulations and constitute the legislative and governing body of the city. So they're stated very specifically. So I wanted to point that out just to make reference to that as I referenced to it earlier. Okay, so the city manager is the administrator. He is appointed by the city council. It should be evident from what I mentioned earlier. He serves at the pleasure of the city council, and we'll see that in just a minute. In that reference, the city council has the ability to hire and fire the city manager according to the terms of his contract. He implements the policy adopted by the city council, and he is to provide experienced professional advice to the city council. And he specifically handles all the administrative duties of the city. So that can include a number of things, which are outlined, and I'll show you that reference here in the ordinances or the charter in just a minute. But that can include appointing and supervising the city staff, enforcing the ordinances that the city council passes, preparing the budget reports and the financial condition of the city, and signing any deeds or instruments of conveyance of any property owned by the city. So here's that reference in the charter, and this is that remember that from the original charter that I highlighted at the beginning. As I mentioned, the only change is to the reference to city council rather than thank you. So it says the city council shall appoint a city manager at the organizational meeting of said board or soon thereafter as practical, who shall be the administrative head of the municipal government under the direction and supervision of said board. And I forgot, I didn't put this reference in here, but I wanted to, since I referenced it earlier, I wanted to point that out to you. Under Section 3 of that same article, it states that the city manager shall be appointed for an indefinite period and shall be subject to the discharge at the will of the city council. So as I mentioned, you hire and fire the city manager at your pleasure, according to the terms of any agreement you reach with that office. Likewise, you'll see that same language in the provision related to your hiring and firing of my position as city attorney. So Article 5, Section 5 sets forth the powers and duties of the city manager. And I didn't put all of those in there, but I referenced those 2 slides back. So let me go back there. So that's what I was referencing in those 4 points. But as you can see, it takes up an entire page of the charter. I just didn't specifically state each one, but those are the big ones that are pointed out. So I wanted to emphasize those. So this is the part where, as I mentioned at the beginning, that I'm going to turn over to Rick to give you any kind of examples of what does this mean. We've seen the overview of what a council manager form of government looks like, how it's supposed to operate. What does this mean for day-to-day operations?
And if y'all remember, we also had Ron Cox the prior year come in and do kind of a general overview, not specific to our charter, but kind of generally how, in a perfect world, and I realize that's not the world we live in, but that it should be the goal, at least, because that's why it is enshrined in an ordinance this way in terms of and actually in a charter, AKA city constitution, best way. And we've had it, and it's amazing we're now only 3 years away, roughly, or getting close to it, 3.5 years away from being 100 years of council manager form of government, which you can actually go back historically, and this is kind of the big picture piece too. You can look at when council manager emerged in that, I think that Wilsonian era, and because previously when you go to major metropolitan areas, or what are now the major metros, you had you basically had political patronage and nepotism and all the above, and you actually had elected officials that would administer various departments. And the reason council manager emerged out of that was and I believe New York was one of the examples, Chicago is another one. The respective elected officials would also end up with a department. So you might have public works, and then that gentleman, usually was a gentleman, would turn around and provide approve contracts to friends and family and so forth. And so the whole emergence of it was really to take it to that corporate model. And again, when you think about Fortune 500 companies, they operate as publicly traded companies. So that's probably the best. So they have to publish their financials. They can't cook those financials. I mean, you've seen instances. We can use Enron as an example. What happens when the financials aren't really the financials? There's implications. So because you have other funds to bear, and there's a fiduciary responsibility. So in the case of Nacogdoches, I don't think we were the earliest, but we were one of the earliest in Texas in terms of adoption of council manager. Now, what does that mean for day to day? And I would say this is like any governmental system. I worked in one city that was strong mayor on paper, administrator, right? I worked in another that was council manager, longstanding. A third one that had been strong mayor administrator, and then they adopted a council manager form of government. However, they left some strange vestiges in their charter, which basically in theirs said, okay, you can still, as individual council members, just go and visit all the department directors. You can kind of tell, you can go ahead and tell the city manager after the fact, which kind of never fully severed what was the strong mayor form of government. So that was a whole different animal. So what does it mean for day to day? So, and this is ideally, that means y'all act corporately, y'all pass ordinances, and then we take those ordinances, and that is the parameters by which we operate the day to day. So in a practical example, and having been at one city when it was the fastest growing in the country, it would happen all the time, is, okay, you get a building permit. The building permit doesn't meet code, which the council has approved. That's code. So you've got the approved code of ordinances, zoning, all the above. Oh, that didn't get approved. They've got to resubmit. So then that party then reaches out to council members. And next thing you know, staff's defending themselves. Now, there was a very good presentation at TML. I don't know if any of y'all sat through, but it was, I think, Portland, Texas. And it was about council manager. And one of the council members, I think the pro tem said, or their mayor said, they had the question come from the crowd. You know, what's a best case scenario? Best case scenario about this very thing is that we don't get in the weeds. He goes, best thing we can do is stick to that, because what ends up happening, even as a council, we get distracted off of the policy role. We get pulled into those weeds, and then staff gets pulled into those weeds, And then what ends up getting lost is maybe even adherence to the larger policy, meaning what actually the law is. So I think it's almost, it has to be reinforced by y'all as well. And the reason I'm bringing some of this up, I know we talked about some things at the retreat. I know we have another item on the agenda tonight, the lobbying ordinance discussion. But as our growth is about to pop, these would probably be the most prevalent examples of the type of things where everybody will be coming to you saying, oh, I didn't like the outcome on this. And you're going to get more of it. This is not just the constituent, oh, my water bill's messed up. This is, I didn't get my way. I want my way. And I'm going to get my way one way or the other. I don't care what the ordinance says. I'm going to apply pressure. So I know we've got Mike in the executive director of over development services and engineering, and his office I know is already getting some of that. Now, just because they say it and they say it a lot doesn't make it true. Okay, so that whole narrative, what you'll get, and I think some of it's already started, but when we had this on the agenda previously, I was trying to get ahead of it before it started, and it becomes a almost perpetual lobbying effort. And so what, in a best case scenario, the default is, yeah, thanks for the call. I would just suggest follow the ordinance. It's that simple, and work with staff. Now, in the most extreme examples, and I don't want to name any cities, but I have seen cities and worked at cities where the deal is done before staff ever sees any application or even knows a developer's coming to town, meaning they have pulled the council. They effectively have created a walking quorum before any application has come to city council or P&Z. Now, in almost every scenario, that would, whether you have a charter or not, you could be strong mayor administrator with no charter and a town of 2,000. That wouldn't be a legal scenario, but it happens all of the time. So where I say the system is only as good as the people that are in it, that's the bottom line. You have your constitution, you have your charter, and knowing that if your heart is in the right place and you're trying to follow it, that's the closest thing you're going to get to it. There is no perfect situation. Somebody's going to say, oh, I kind of forgot about it. But it's when there's a constant pressure and intent, and that becomes the way you operate. That's when the entire credibility of the council manager, form of government, just kind of goes away. And with that, it might not just be, oh, next thing you know, coming to the manager. It also becomes going to the building department, going to the engineering department, and effectively carrying water for those that really don't want to follow the ordinance. And I've seen it now, for decades at this point. I do think as we're about to pop on growth, we're going to get more of it. Now, as you see, y'all probably were never approached by Chick-fil-A, probably never approached by Aldi, other than a ribbon cutting. We've even had some come recently and do pre-development meetings on multifamily that would not be subsidized. And their comment has been, wow, y'all don't have impact fees. That is an incentive. So, and those that build in other places would tell you that our current ordinances are actually not that restrictive. You're going to get pressure, and the ones that will probably most likely pressure you will be the ones that you already know on a first name basis. I have worked in those situations where once a place pops, you don't have to worry about the big nationals coming in and pressuring you, unless it's overbuilding residential. Then you'll probably receive a campaign contribution, and all the council will. But let's just say it's retail. If it's a national retailer, restaurant group, they build anywhere, East Coast, West Coast, Houston, Dallas. They come in, they've got their engineers, they got their planners, their architects, and they look at your codes. You never hear from them. They drop it in the system. They pay their fee. They don't complain about the fee, and you're done. That's exactly what has happened with some of the ones I just named that are on North. That is how it should work. But once the growth pops, you will start getting other pressure. That's what I tried to kind of communicate at our last meeting. However long ago that was now, month plus ago. So I'd be happy to, and they will want you to carry their water. And many times they'll want you to go directly to those departments is what they'll really want. They're like, well, the city manager is just going to say, we're following the ordinance. Well, you don't have to do that. Please do this for me. But I've seen it. I've seen it time and time again. And that was the actual reason to have the discussion at our retreat, and also the larger discussion on the lobbying ordinance. So
Let me just add something to that. Is just recently, I'd say the last 6 months, maybe 9 months, like the examples that Rick gave about Aldi, about Lanes, about Tractor Supply, you don't hear a word out of anybody about it. What I have heard is the people that live here and have built here and are still building here that are not getting their way like they did 3 years ago or 2 years ago, because that's the way they did it. That's the way they've always done it. I could walk in this office because of who I am and get it done, period. If you want to run this city like that, we might as well just be Garrison or Cushing or whoever. Mike's got a plan to where people are not going to like the change, but it's going to have to come where everybody is on the same page, everybody plays by the same rules, everybody is treated the same, period, dot. So it's my only thing. But they think they're somebody, and their families lived here a long time, and they did it this way a long time ago, and they don't want it changed.
And here's the danger. If we end up in that situation, again, I've seen it everywhere. It's not just Nacogdoches. We aren't special like that. Every place that has demand and something starts coming, you'll have that element. But you can't operate on two sets of approval books, two sets of ordinances. If you deny one because, wait a minute, you've approved this over here, and their plan sets are sloppy, and they don't really meet code, and you do get a national in here, and then they submit something that's better than that, but still doesn't get approved. What you got is a lawsuit with a big entity that can cost you a lot of money. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you've got to have, we are here to create that level playing field based on the policy that y'all have adopted. And it's also a lot of the things where there's transportation, flooding, erosion, conflicts between properties. Most of these items, not all of them, many of these items are included in the ordinance, and the only way to prevent them as we grow is to follow the ordinance. Some of which were never being fully, and I think Mike could speak to that, never fully being applied in the past, even if they were in the ordinance.
So I have some questions, if that's okay. I don't want to get into this either-or fallacy that we either have all this control or we don't have. I can see that, not following the ordinances, that's totally, I totally get that. The people have to follow the ordinances, that you really need to handle all the economic development and all the discussions. There's so many discussions going on. But where my questions come in is policy and funding. So there's so much that has not already been decided by ordinance about our policies, where we're headed, what we're going to do with history, what we're going to do with, all kinds of things, where we're headed, particularly if we're talking about the comprehensive plan, heading down that way. And people want to give us input. And we want to be able to give you input and give everybody input and make some of those larger decisions. So how does that work? That's number one. And let me ask my second one, which has to do with the budget. Last year, we really didn't have a lot of input into the budget. It was just kind of done, that all of, I assume, the departments gave you their budget, and then it was presented to us as a, you know, you adopt this or you don't adopt it, and including the tax rate. I know other cities that are council manager kinds of government, they have more input into the budget earlier on. Is that something we should be able to expect this year, to have more input into some of these, and some of them might be specific budget items, but into the budget as a whole? That seems to be part of council manager, you know.
I would disagree that's okay. There's a micro versus a macro approach. I was at one city where they had 26, mind you, 26 budget meetings or hearings. You had quibbling over $500 line items. It was a city bigger than this, 4 times the size. Did it add value? Did they miss all kinds of other things? Did they get major projects completed?
So
No,
26.
The answer would be no. The answer
Okay.
would be no.
How many should we expect?
I don't think that
None?
there should be a set number. I think we've run very lean. I think if there's anything that we've presented, we can dive into those details. But do I think the micro approach versus looking at what the accomplishments are and then come your over under in the big picture piece? Now, each department dives in, and if you were, and this is where I would say, I don't know if my school of thought is that if we've done the budget right, if we've approached it correctly, there shouldn't be a lot of the excess fat that someone would say, okay, that this could be cut, this could be cut. I think most of the departments I've got a few of them here, would probably say, oh, wait, I didn't get all those asks.
So what about things that you may not even know about, input into the budget? What about items that are of concern to people in the community that you may not even be thinking about maybe putting more emphasis on one part of the budget, another? So I've been told by other council manager that we should expect at least 2 or 3 workshops just to be able to, and ask our priorities in the budget.
Kathleen, I'm not gonna get into the weeds on a budget and stay here all night long, 2 or 3 meetings, and talk about ticky-tack stuff, you know. It is your city manager's responsibility, okay?
Let me ask you though, how many budget workshops do you think we should have? None?
No. I
Because
didn't
what
state
that-
that. We had our major workshop,
Just 1 hour, right, before we
Correct.
pass the
How many
budget?
do you need?
but we could have more. I mean, we could have 2 or 3. But the question is, and this is the kind of, I hate to say this, I don't think more meetings necessarily makes a better outcome.
It doesn't.
Now, you could have 10 meetings or you could have 1 meeting. You could have the same result or you could have a worse result either direction. At the end of the day, I do think it's a combination of having competent staff, going through their budgets, only proposing the items that are either of necessity or are part of your kind of your operating paradigm. Meaning, yes, if you have parks, yes, if you have a recreation and library and other things like that, you have to fund those. Now, there may be some people that think, okay, why do we have this when we've got a police department? Well, the question is, okay, that's a larger policy question, not just a budgeting question.
Right, right.
Do you want to just be a police department with a city council and a landfill? Those are those kind of, and there are some cities that take that approach.
Right, right.
Then you have to ask the other question. Do you want to worry about Gulfstream's landing at the airport?
So
these
I'm
are-
back to,
I would say budget goals.
right?
I would say if we want to talk more about budget goals
So-
on the front end, even more, but we did set goals. We did present it.
Well, let me just back up and say, I think getting our input into the next budget, I think would be very helpful. It doesn't even have to be in a workshop. It could be individually with each of us. But getting our input into the things we're concerned about, into the things we think we might want to invest some money into, I think that would be helpful. And then back to the other part about input, how do people come to me, as you know, and they have suggestions and they have thoughts. And I think giving you input into that is really important, particularly as we set our goals for the city in the next several years through a comprehensive plan. It's not an either or. It's not 26 meetings or 0 meetings. It's not, I think we need some kind of process that we actually help to frame policy for the future, particularly at this juncture, because we're doing a lot of different things. Again, I'm not talking about following the ordinances. I don't think I have ever, in all my years on this council, have ever come to bat for somebody who's breaking an ordinance. I've asked for clarification or other things, but I've never done that. I don't even care about that. But I do care that the city, the people in the city, are involved in setting our priorities, setting where we're going to go. I want to get your feedback.
The comprehensive plan is one of the large opportunities, just like the
Right.
downtown plan was.
Well, I don't know that we had particular input into the downtown plan, but on the other hand, I didn't question it because so much of the downtown plan is economic development and who's got the money and, details like that. But as we get into the larger comprehensive plan, I think we, as council members, need to provide input, and the city needs to, the people who live here need.
And that typically is how that process rolls. I mean, truthfully, I've been at 2 different cities where I didn't attend one comprehensive plan meeting because you let everybody have their input.
I don't understand what your response is. I mean, are we going to, do people give individual council members input? Do we hold our own
No,
meeting?
you hold public meetings,
Okay,
but it doesn't mean
Okay.
the city manager's trying to highlight what the outcome should be. So you go through a public meeting process, you solicit other public opinion, you let that go where it goes. And then you look at the things that are implementable.
right,
You look at the things that actually fit the land use. You have to filter out the things that are just chatter that
yeah.
aren't even relevant. So again, there will be and I know that we've went through the process of applying to the GLO. There will be a public process, just like there will be, and we had a discussion with TechSet, North Street discussions, and where that plan will go. That will have a series of public meetings when we get into North Street.
Ultimately, you are responsible for the budget, right?
Ultimately,
Presenting it to us.
That's
to
correct.
work.
presenting the budget plus, and we're not doing anything, truthfully, we're not doing anything materially different at all, where I had a budget that was twice this. I'll just say this. And in that case, I had a long-standing, probably 15-year CFO, Harvard educated, all the above. It also worked at large places, very large places. I don't mean like 200,000. I mean like $1 million. And again, I've seen both approaches. The micro, let's fight over $500 here. Let's fight over $1,500 over there. Or let's look at the larger policy areas and are we meeting goals? And you have to remember this last budget and this last fiscal year and the prior one. Then we've already started getting into bonds. We've got 2 tranches of bond sales. We have a separate bond sale that occurred on the utility side, on revenue bonds. So there is detail behind everything that we've brought y'all. And I realize it's a lot to digest. Now, the question is, are y'all saying you would want to go division by division, separate? I mean, there's a million ways to do it. The question is, how would you like it presented? We do try to run through it. And admittedly, I'll set the goals in terms of, okay, why are you are we asking for what we need? Or are you asking for this is not a wish list. Now, and staff would tell you, we don't approach it as a wish list. There are other places that do, but I don't think many cities are in the position to take that. Question?
So from a budgeting standpoint, the one we just did was my fourth pass through this cycle. And we've done it, I think, 4 different ways. Now, the first year you were here was a little different because we were all trying to figure out where we fit in. But we went division by division my second year on council, and we all hated it. We hated it because of how long it took and how many different things there were. And then last year, or year before last, we had a discussion. We had 2 workshops, I think. Am I right on that? 2 workshops 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. But this last year, we had an entire council retreat where we set goals and priorities. And then we had the discussion throughout the year what our coming budget priorities were, and then we solidified everything. Am I mistaken on how that process went?
Actually, no. You know, if we're comparing it to official budget workshops versus what the priorities are, what the priorities have been, some of which also include those that the voters had voted for in terms of implementation, where we've needed to supplement. Now, I would think, and this is just me, I would hope, and this is why we approach it this way, if we haven't vetted it internally in terms of trying to trim some stuff down that's not necessary or might be asks, I have seen cities where the manager goes, oh, we'll let council decide. Do we need 30 Tahoes or 20 Tahoes? Oh, do we need playground? Do we need another park or not? So you throw everything in, and then you get into extended, probably level of detail that's not necessary, that starts getting you out of some of the policy piece, unless you're kind of policying it on the fly. So to your question, when we set the priorities, that is exactly why we did that. That's why we did it last year. That's why we just did it. And then as we move into this budget, Todd and I have already had several discussions, and his forecasting piece. Remember, we've been forecasting throughout the year, and he's tried to show what that's going to look like. So he's trying to do 3-year forecasts. This is not like, okay, here's the budget, this is it. We're trying to give you a heads up. This is the direction things are going, and then tapping even into utility funds, and this is the point where you're either going to have to make some adjustments, or we can't buy more vehicles, or we're going to have to grow revenue in another area. So we are trying to start forecasting. But we never quit doing the budgeting process. Even we're looking at things mid-year. We're looking at sales tax right now. We're looking at OT in certain departments. I may have mentioned that in my last weekly update.
So I do want to respond to Chad's. I don't like the huge multi-day whatever. I think that was ridiculous. 2 years ago, we actually had one workshop where we actually could give input, and we changed something substantially based on that input. We decided to help the police force, and that changed the budget, budget proposal, and the city came back with a different proposal. Last year, we only saw the budget one time, 1 hour before. I'm saying not that I have any, I would like to be able to give input and to give feedback that people give us, and that I think is really appropriate. And as we proceed, it's not just the budget, it's we, the people of Nacogdoches, need to be able to give input on larger questions. Again, the either-or fallacy, well, we don't want to get in the minutiae, so therefore everything has to just be decided ahead of time. I'm concerned about that. So
We didn't say everything's decided ahead of time.
okay, well, that's all my. I had promised that I would listen to people and do my research.
But by the same token,
but I do need to do my
when
research.
we get into an engineering project, we're not going to have it engineered and
I don't think
value
anybody is.
and value engineered while we're in the process of the project via public comment.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has ever suggested that, but I certainly have not.
But I've seen that. I've seen it where
Right.
where the public, okay, you should build it this way, not that way. Yeah, when you're in the design process. Now, I'm not talking about a public design process. I'm talking about a sewer line or
Do
something.
you
I've
want to be
given my
city
input.
manager, Kathleen?
I've already given my input, into this.
Do you
so
want to be
thank you.
city manager? It's a yes or no.
Rick, question.
It's a ridiculous question.
Well, you want to answer it?
No, I don't
Because
want to answer
that's where you
it.
are.
Giving input into a city manager and into the city's budget is not the same thing. And I don't like being bullied. so-
I'm not bullying you. Do you want to be city manager?
Rick, a question.
Or finance director? You and Sammy?
I do.
Okay, all right. Well, just go down to Human Resources tomorrow and you can apply.
Really, no one really wants to be a city manager when they're a small child. I'll just leave it at that.
And Rick, you do know, I do think you're doing a great job. I have said that publicly many times, but I do think we need input, so.
We're talking about our respective roles. What is your vision for, I'd say we talk about the ideal and the reality. In the ideal world, how does a council member approach a constituent issue? How should we handle that?
So typically, if y'all have if there's an issue, y'all send an email. You can send an email to, let's say it's to me, and then you don't necessarily have to copy them, or depends on the issue. It might be one you say, wait, there's something immediately happening right now. It's cases. We know it's cases. People, they're gonna have to fix something. It's not an emergency, but it's almost. It's not inappropriate to go ahead and send an email and copy me. Send one a case, copy me, or copy me and Mike. So that, I know Ron talked about this. That's where the city manager's office and staff in terms become the pivot. Now, how it gets done, right? So handing it, that's what that council talked about from South Texas. It's not that the input isn't passed on. It's passed on, and one specifically said it. It's passed on, and in how it's handled, though, that's not microed. You follow me? So
I don't follow.
it's handed on, and it's dealt with by staff. But how it's handled, the council, unless otherwise you have a situation where you have effectively, unilaterally, you might have one council member. Oh, I don't like how that was handled. Well, wait a minute. What if it's handled all the way to ordinance, all the way to policy? So I don't like how it's, so then you're back in the weeds again. So what they're saying is, with our constituents, and this is exactly what they said, we pass it on. We make sure that the manager and the respective department has it, that there's going to be eyes on it, they're going to take care of it. At most, they'll let that constituent know, okay, it's been passed on. But they don't go back and forth. They don't continue to go back and forth and get into those weeds, because you will get those that continually say, well, I want it done and I want it this way. Well, respectfully, the ordinance says this, and I'm sorry, your fence is in public right away. I mean, it could be something like that. Well, I want a different outcome. And that's the difference. Because what'll end up happening is they won't like the outcome, and they'll come back and forth to you and say, well, I need it to be this. I need this answer. The answer I want, not the answer that is, which would be what the ordinance would be based on. Like the only answer you could legally give them. And I think Jerry has said grace over many things like that. I hate to kick over to him. I know that Mike does. And so in those cases, I think you hand it on and you hand it on, the staff has it. It may be, okay, even if it's weak, how did that work out type question? But when you have the same one going back and forth, beating the dead horse, that's not actually adding value. And there's a point in there where that can also not be an ideal council manager situation.
So I have worked in the school world most of my career, and I liken it to when a parent's in the room with a principal. They're not happy with what's going on, and then in walks the superintendent. Well, the principal doesn't have anything to say anymore. Their whole authority has been taken away because there's someone with seemingly more power in the room. They don't want to talk, the parent doesn't want to talk to the principal anymore because they're in with the big dog now. Well, if they come to us and then we don't give the answer they want, they're gonna keep coming to us and not to you, and I don't have time to do your job, frankly.
Well, it would also be like this. It'd be like shopping an answer between mom and dad in some ways too.
I've never done that.
And don't ever do that.
Sorry, Mayor, to interrupt, but we have a hard stop at 5:50.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, Rick, are you done?
I don't want to hear me talk more.
Everybody done? Or you want to pick this up in another workshop?
I don't really understand. I'd like it a little more clear as to, do you want, somebody comes to me, because there's a transition going on from developers that have been here for 50 years, and their version of the way they develop is different than the newer
Well,
version.
but let me say this, but the ordinance actually, in some cases, the ordinance hadn't even changed. In other areas, yes, there's been some tweaks, but, and Mike can, speak to this. You know, what is a sealed engineered plan set? I mean, we're getting those, we have those kind of, oh, wait a minute. I've never had to submit that, might be in the ordinance, but doesn't have the seal, and okay, we're only accepting them if it's sealed by registered professional.
Well,
And
let me finish, okay? We're in a transition. So there's people that have always done business like you're talking about for a long, long time. And all of a sudden, I don't quite, they come to me and they ask me, they say, this is what I'm trying to do. What do I do? Do you want me to just go to you and then you go back to them? These are friends and neighbors.
regardless of relationship, especially because of relationship, what the answer should be, we're a policy board. One, this is your business. So that needs to go back through planning and engineering. Again, it's shopping for an answer. It's shopping for cutting cost. It's shopping for not following ordinance. It is. And I'm just going to say it. I mean, it needs to be said. I've seen this. It's the whole reason guys like me don't enjoy this kind of stuff. You can't say, okay, this is what we've adopted. And you said it. Friend, neighbor, but has a business. I want it this way. But when Aldi comes, I want German engineering because it's a German company. I want them to follow German engineering, not Nacogdoches. And we all know that theirs is a little more, that's why they call it German engineering, not Aggie engineering.
Do you want it run like a corporation?
It's supposed to be.
Well, if it is, we're going broke.
No, we're not going broke.
That's what-
we're going
that's-
broke because it wasn't run historically like a corporation.
There you go.
But that's what you guys were telling us in the last meeting, is that we have 2 years left and we don't have any money.
Because of how the financial paradigm has been for some time.
But the transition they're having to make is that 50 years we've developed here, and all of a sudden, we can't even get in to talk to somebody. That's what I'm talking about. There has to be a little bit of
And
give and take
it also
at first.
and it also
or
doesn't mean
explanation.
that I don't like the answer from the engineer and I go straight to the city manager either.
If you do give and take, then you never will get
Yeah,
to the right
it's-
solution.
The-
Never.
The ordinance
Never.
is not a negotiation. Otherwise, I would say change the ordinance.
Well, I
and-
think a transition from a small town to an urban town is a transition that we're gonna have to deal with. You can't, I don't believe you can just go in and say, hey, listen, all the rules have changed, tough noogies, you guys may live here all your life, you may be Ben's, but it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about what's already on the books. Never been,
It's just being enforced
never been,
now.
it's just been enforced now. And even that, we are being very, very, is the word forgiving? Yeah, I mean, this has not been a hard stop. This is not becoming Dallas overnight. But what we are trying to do is get folks to, okay, focus on what the ordinance says. If it says you need to have a sealed sheet, floodplain wise, because we get the complaints from council members when there's erosion, when there's no silt fence, when there's construction next door, when it affects them. So we can't have the ordinance over here saying this was always supposed to be done, and then over here we get the complaint. If we don't follow our own ordinance, we're our own worst enemy about why we are, let's say, flooding or having erosion onto an adjacent lot.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it right here. There could be a possibility that we bring this workshop back up at a later date. Okay, we're finished tonight. Okay.
Did y'all have
we'll adjourn.
fun?